Hello, all you beautiful and amazing people. Thank you for tuning in and welcome to the show. If you're new to the channel, I'm your host, Hyde, and this is Hide and Seek Media, where we talk about news, sports, politics, and much more. So the results of the most comprehensive election audit in this country's history are in, and the revelations are astounding. You have the staunchest of Trump supporters pinning all of their hopes on these results, wishing that the 2020 election could get overturned. Now, I want to say this is not one of those videos. So if you have clicked onto this video in hopes that I'm going to tell you that the Arizona audit resulted in massive fraud and Donald Trump won the election, that's not what's going to happen here. So you can click out right now. All right. Now, what I am going to do is we are going to talk about the Arizona audit. We are going to go over the evidence that was presented. We are going to talk about what that means for the 2022 election and for some other states that are conducting audits like this as well. We are also going to talk about how the mainstream media have framed this and how independent media is not covering it. All of that in this video and much more. But before we get to all that, make sure to click the link down below and join my locals community today. With your premium subscription of only $2.99 a month, you'll get access to all of my videos and articles, plus exclusive content found only on locals.com. And if you join before Halloween, you'll be entered in for a chance to win free merch from the Hide and Seek Media store. So make sure to click the link down below and join today. And remember, you can always support Hide and Seek Media by clicking the merch link in the description below and picking you out a cool, funny political t-shirt like this one or this one. So click the link below. Now, let's get to the news. So we're going to talk about how the mainstream media has framed the results of this Arizona audit done by Cyber Ninjas. Then we're going to talk about how independent media is not covering it, at least not as far as I can see. Then we'll get into the results of the audit and the evidence that was presented. So if you want to know all that, make sure to stay tuned. All right, so the mainstream media is all coming out and saying that the audit recount resulted in 99 more votes for Biden, which just proves that Biden won the election. And I will say this, that statement is factually true. When they did a recount, they found 99 more ballots for Biden. Trump had lost a couple hundred ballots in that recount as well. And so that, like I said, that statement from the mainstream media is true, right? But there's a lot more to this audit than just that one recount. This wasn't just a recount. This was an audit, okay? So they just didn't go through and count all the ballots, Biden, Trump, ballot, Biden, Trump, Biden, Trump, Trump, whatever, okay? They went through and examined them all. They looked at the scans of the envelopes. They looked at the what machines they could look at. They looked at, they looked at all of there's a lot of data that they looked at other than just recounting ballots. Okay. So the mainstream media is doing you a disservice when that is all they talk about in this audit, because the presentation alone was 3 hours long. Okay. A presentation doesn't take 3 hours if all you're going to talk about is a recount and how you found 99 more votes. So people, do your research. Okay. And if you don't want to, you can click the subscribe button and the notification bell so you get notified anytime I put down a new video, and you can find out from me doing all of my research. So let's get to the Fox News article. GOP Maricopa County audit confirms Biden 2020 victory in Arizona. Nevertheless, Arizona Republicans sent the report to the Attorney General asking him to verify the report. Arizona Republicans concluded their audit of the 2020 presidential election Friday and said in a letter to the Attorney General that the review's overall tally matched results from November. Truth is truth, numbers are numbers. Arizona President Karen Fann said at a Senate hearing on the review from Maricopa County, which found the numbers from the audit were close to the numbers from the November election. Okay, so I'm going to stop right there because, again, like I said, that is factually true. When you counted all the ballots, it's pretty close. Okay, there was a discrepancy, but it wasn't enough to raise alarm bells. Okay, so yes, the counts were pretty close. At this point, I don't think anybody is going to dispute that. Nevertheless, the recount confirmed Biden had more votes. Nobody is arguing. But the question is, were those votes legitimate? Were they legal? That is the question that nobody, even Fox News, seems to be asking. Those numbers were close, within a few hundred, Fann said, according to reports. Fann did, however, send the results to the state's Attorney General Mark Brnovich, pointing out several irregularities found by the audit and called on him to investigate them. We are asking him to open a formal investigation so that he can pursue and seek additional information, additional facts, perhaps get some of these missing things that we were unable to get, verify all this information, and take the appropriate actions of anything that is necessary to do. I have every confidence that he will be doing that, Fann said in her letter to the Attorney General. Again, they're focusing on the recount, and then they say irregularities, all right? There were some serious irregularities. And we're going to get into those a little bit later, so make sure to stay tuned. But I wanted to, touch on this a little bit. This audit, okay, the presentation was 3 hours long. Okay, it was very detailed. It was very in-depth. That's why it took as long as it did for us to get the results. I mean, look, we are at the end of September. And we are just now getting the results of this audit because it was that detailed, it was that in-depth, and it took that long to process all this data and to get, through all of it. And because Arizona was brave enough to do this thorough audit, okay, so it spawned a number of states to do the same thing. So we have this article from Forbes, right? Big lie election audits go on after Arizona. Here's what's happening in Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Texas. Arizona's highly controversial election audit wrapped up Friday as the GOP-backed company conducting it announced the investigation had actually increased President Joe Biden's margin of victory, but Republicans in multiple other states are already underway on other probes that could sow new doubts in the presidential vote count. Okay? Key facts. 3 different election investigations are underway in Wisconsin. An investigation initiated by Republican Assembly Speaker Robin Vos, a separate so-called forensic audit modeled after Arizona by GOP Rep. Janelle Brandtjen, and investigation by the Senate's nonpartisan Legislative Audit Bureau, which the Republican-led legislator asked to conduct. While Brandtjen's audit has stalled after Vos refused to sign subpoenas for county's election equipment, Vos's investigation is moving forward, led by a former state Supreme Court justice who has expressed openness to MyPillow CEO Mike Lindell's baseless claims of election fraud. Okay, so fraud, they like to use that F word, a lot. And we are not going to use that word here because that is a dirty word. And we're not going to use that dirty word here because I don't think that what this constitutes as fraud. So it's a gray area. So we're not going to use that F word here. Okay, the word irregularity seems to pop up a lot, so we'll use that word, right, instead of the F word, so that maybe we can kind of walk people through this a little bit, because I want people to understand that while there were some big results that the mainstream media is not talking about, you may not like where these results go. So, be warned. You will get what you ask for. So, I just want to preface that. So, we're not going to use the F word. We're going to call them irregularities going forward. Ex-Justice Michael Gableman sent emails to local election clerks asking them to preserve election-related records. That's key. But the email was flagged as a security risk or junk mail for many of the counties because it came from a Gmail account seemingly unconnected to Gableman, the Associated Press reports, and many clerks are ignoring his requests. Pennsylvania election audit is now underway after a contentious power struggle over which Republican lawmaker would lead it, as GOP state senators started hearings in the investigation and controversially subpoenaed the state for personnel information of all, or personal, I'm sorry, and controversially subpoenaed the state for personal information on all of Pennsylvania's 6.9 million voters. Democrats in the state are pushing back on the subpoenas, with both state senators and Pennsylvania Attorney General Josh Shapiro suing to block them. Look, here's my thing. If you're so worried about the integrity of the vote and how, or if you're so worried about the faith in our election system, why are you blocking these audits? If you wanted faith in these election systems, then maybe, just maybe, you ought to be seeking full transparency. That's the only way you prove yourself, is by being 100% transparent. Now, when I see 100 lawsuits filed, right, to stop the Arizona audit, and now you read this, more lawsuits filed to try and block these audits, it seems to me that you're not trying to save the integrity of the vote as much as you are trying to stop people from seeing behind the curtain. And there was some shady stuff done that the Arizona audit found, and we're going to get into that. So like I said, make sure to stay tuned because that's coming up later in the show. Right? Forbes goes on to report, former President Trump asked Texas on Thursday to conduct an audit into the state's election results, despite winning the state with 52% of the vote. And the Texas Secretary of State's office complied, launching investigations into 4 counties' vote counts. The big number, they say, 99. That's the number of additional votes for Biden in Maricopa County that Cyber Ninjas, the controversial private company leading the Arizona audit, counted as compared with the state's official tally. The audit also found 261 fewer votes for Trump than the state. There we go. Again, another recount, but numbers aren't the same. How can you... it's hard to trust who to trust, right? You got one side saying, well, we did an investigation and we found this, and you have the other side saying, well, we did an investigation and we found this. But numbers don't lie, right? And nowadays, computers record everything, right? And some of these people know how to find all kinds of crap on your computer that you wouldn't know was on there, or that you didn't think was still on there, right? And you think you wipe your hard drive and all that. Man, there's so much crap left on there that you don't know about, and all these stupid DLL files and all that, and all these logs that Windows keeps and all these different programs keep that you don't have anything, you don't know anything about. I don't even know anything. I'm, a layman when it comes to all that stuff, just as much as the next guy. So when I hear this guy's an expert and he was in the military and he did this and he's got 20 years of this kind of experience and these kind of degrees and whatever, I'm going to take his word. Hey man, that guy knows his stuff. And if he knows his stuff and this is what he's found, until you can say, nope, these people examined the same thing and they didn't find that, then maybe we can have a conversation. But until you have that, it's just one side calling these people liars with no proof, while these people have evidence. Like, look, this is what we found. Disprove it. Other than calling me a liar, right? Because that doesn't work anymore. Liar, liar, pants on fire stopped working when you were in second grade. So stop it. They continue to say, crucial quote, why do we audit everything in this world, but people raise their hand? Okay, let's try that again. Crucial quote. Why do we audit everything in this world, but people raise their hands in concern when we audit elections, which is fundamental to our democracy? Texas Governor Greg Abbott said on Fox News Sunday in defense of the state's election audit. The governor also claimed the elections investigation began months ago and were already underway, but host Chris Wallace noted the county's investigations were only publicly announced hours after Trump made his request to the state. Abbott did not offer any clarification on that timeline. Chief critic. The chairman of Wisconsin's Republican Party of Fond du Lac County said on Twitter after the Arizona audit results came out that he hoped the findings mean my fellow Republicans will stop with this nonsense and begin to focus on the 2022 elections. Now, I'm going to pause right here and say he's right. We need to stop with the 2020 election and start focusing on 2022 and 2024. Okay? If you are one of those people who believe that there were massive irregularities, well, I won't say that because I don't want to get banned from YouTube. So if you want to hear my opinion on that, make sure to click the link down below and sign up to my locals community and become a premium member today. For just $2.99 a month, you'll be able to hear all of my opinions about the 2020 election without being censored. So click the link down below and join the community today. Now let's get back to the article. Right now, the GOP effort is hacking off Republican clerks and alienating soft GOP voters who think we're nuts and wasting their tax dollars. Ron W. Bishop said. Surprising fact. While proponents of the GOP election investigations typically refer to their efforts as forensic audits, that term has been disputed as inaccurate. Election experts cited by Georgia Public Broadcasting explain the term typically refers to financial investigations that examine minute details that can be traced to individual accounts, which is impossible with election ballots that are submitted anonymously. But the envelopes have their names on it. And that's part of what they were investigating, was the envelopes. Not just the ballots. It was a full forensic audit. They looked at everything. Well, everything that Maricopa County would turn over anyways. All right, so now we're going to get into the evidence, right? And first up in the presentation was a man by the name of Dr. Shiva, right? And so what Dr. Shiva created Echo Mail. He was one of the first people to really work really exclusively with email, and he won a White House competition to categorize emails like back in the 90s or something like that. So he's been in the tech world for a while. He's owned like 7 tech companies, so he kind of has a good grasp on what he was going to investigate. He had a pretty good grasp. So he has a pretty good grasp of what he was doing, and his job was to investigate the um, mail-in ballot envelopes, specifically the signatures. Now, they weren't verifying signatures, right? They weren't taking signatures from voter rolls and comparing them to the envelope scans they had and verifying that each voter was right. What they were doing was looking at the legibility of the signature, whether it was an actual signature or just a scribble, or whether there was a signature at all, right? And what they found was pretty astounding. Here, listen to what Dr. Shiva has to say.
Let's go to the highlights here. So these are the key findings, and I'm going to go through each one of them. One of the key findings is it's unknown how many EVB return envelopes were originally received by Maricopa. We had 34,488 duplicates from 17,126 unique voters. It's actually duplicate images. Maricopa reported no duplicates in the canvass report. We have 464 more no signatures between blanks than that were identified by us versus Maricopa. Maricopa has 6,545 more unique EVB return envelopes. This is what's interesting. If you consider our scribbles, again, a very, very low tolerance and pattern recognition, having done this for over 40 years, we could have used like 36 features. We used one single feature, pixel density. We would love to use more features, but just using that one feature at a very low threshold is key here, we've identified 2,580 scribbles, which would have assumed they're all bad signatures. Maricopa identified 0.031%, which is what that 587 represents. This actually represents 4 times that. We'll come back to that. Finally, Maricopa has 9,589 more net EVB envelopes that was submitted to signature verification versus what we have. And what we're also going to see shortly is that we're going to see that we also saw through further analysis a 25% surge of duplicates in the last 6 days between November 4th to the 9th. We also saw some very interesting other anomalies where blanks of duplicates were being stamped, verified, and approved. We also saw stamps of verified and approved in blank signature regions, and I'll share with you those. What's more interesting, I would consider it's potentially a critical anomaly, is that we saw the verified and approved stamps appearing behind the envelopes. And I'll show you this. It's almost as though it was imaged on there, or I don't want to say, Photoshop, but put on there. But it's quite fascinating. I'm sure there's some explanation for this. And then finally, we have cases where we have 2 different voter IDs having the same address, same phone, same name, with matching signatures. So let's go look at some of these anomalies a little more graphically. Anomaly 1, Maricopa reported only 587 bad signatures. To give you some idea, that's 0.031%. And for people who didn't really like math, I thought I'd make it a little more pictorial. So this would be 1 bad signature for every 3,268 early voting ballot envelopes. So if you think about 1,918,463 early voting ballots, the unique ones that Maricopa said they got, and for each paper, by the way, the size of the paper is 0.1 millimeter, and you were to put them up, you would get 630 feet. That's the size, believe it or not, it's of the St. Louis Arch. That height, when compared to the bad signatures, would be only about 2.31 inches. So just to give you a pictorial understanding, a very, very low percentage was considered that. So again, that would be, to be specific, 0.0306% of all EVB return envelopes were deemed as bad signature. Okay. In our case, the anomalies, we discovered 2,580 bad signatures, scribbles. Again, very low tolerance, which is 0.135%. And to give you an idea, just to state it again, we were commissioned to identify the present blanks, scribbles, and signatures, not to perform signature verification. So if scribbles alone were considered bad signatures, and EchoMail itself identified 335% more bad signatures than Maricopa did from its entire signature verification process. Okay, very important point here. And by the way, if we go look back at the state of Arizona 2016 general election, out of the 2 million ballots that came in, they had a signature mismatch rate of 0.13%, close to what we would have had if we just included those scribbles. All right. Again, just to restate, the scribbles are a very, very low threshold. We were not asked to do signature verification. Again, anything between 0.1 to 1% pixel density. The third anomaly is, this is again, focusing on signatures. We did a randomized analysis of just supervised review, which is human review, just randomly looking at signatures, their legibility. Again, this is a wonderful analysis that can be done in handwriting, 4 weeks before the election and 4 days after. We can't share with you this, obviously, but we found out 4 weeks before, 95% were legible signatures and only 5% were illegible. But 4 days after, 5% were legible, 95% were illegible. If I were to do a heat map, again, this is a representation, it would look like this, where the red represents illegibility and the green represents legibility. It would look like this if you wanted to visually do this. And if we had more, if we were commissioned to do this, we could do this. But you can see a marked difference between legibility. There could again be an explanation for this. Fourth anomaly. As the EVBs, which means the electronic voting ballot, I couldn't put the word envelopes, but I think you get the idea, increased by 53% in the general election from 2016 to 2020 in Maricopa, bad signatures decreased. Let me explain what I mean by that. So in 2016, which is, in the previous election to 2020, 1,257,179 return envelopes were submitted. 1,456 were considered to have a mismatch with a rejection rate of 0.116. In 2020, we have nearly 52% more return envelopes, but the signature mismatch rate goes down by nearly 56%. So it's gone down by a significant number here, okay, nearly 4 times. So this went up, the other two came down.
So he found 17,000 plus duplicate ballots. 2 ballots, 1 person. 17,000 duplicates. They had 1,400 plus ballots with no signature on the envelope. I mean, come on. Some of these things are egregious beyond. 17,000 is more than what Joe Biden won Arizona by, right? Those votes shouldn't count. Now, here's something that's really going to twist your wig, all right? I don't care whether they were Trump votes or Biden votes. They should not count. They were illegal votes. Period. Let's take those out and then let's recount the votes. Let's take out the ones with no signatures and recount the votes and see what we come up with. Right? And that is just the beginning of the presentation. The middle part of the presentation, they talk about the recount and how they found votes for Biden and, how Trump lost votes. But if you guys have been reading the mainstream media or watching mainstream media, you've heard that enough. I'm not even going to get into that here. So we're going to move on to what I think is the most crucial part of the audit and the most damning part of the audit. And it's definitely the most criminal part of the audit, right? So the last part of the audit was about the cybersecurity in the Maricopa County election. And the lack thereof is what I should have said, because it was non-existent. I mean, listen to what some of these guys have to say about what happened with the logins and the servers and the scanners. It's crazy. It's crazy.
So as I talk today, uh, people may have heard some of my previous testimony, but it's important to reiterate these findings in the course of this final hearing. So we'll talk about the withheld devices and data and how that impacted our ability to provide a complete report to the Senate here today. We'll talk about the cybersecurity issues that we have found, the hardware configuration control issues, atypical anonymous logins that are present on the systems, the listening ports and attempted connections on boot up, and internet connections and internet history that was found on these devices as part of the course. Next slide. Talk about the withheld devices for a moment here. As with any audit, access to information and the right information in a timely manner is absolutely critical to finding a complete result for an investigation. In the case of this audit, we were never provided access to the routers and network-related data. And that becomes very impactful when we start talking about validating and confirming unauthorized accesses to the election management system itself. We were not provided the poll worker laptops. Now, these are the laptops that poll workers use at each precinct to validate the voters and to interact with election-related functions at that particular precinct.
And then you have this.
Go a little deeper into the cybersecurity issues as we found them. Actually, you've skipped a slide, or no, I'm sorry. So let's talk about the, go back one slide, please. Let's talk about the cybersecurity issues. Now, the Department of Homeland Security has a division called CISA, and CISA has a recommendation that's published on the internet for how to configure and manage election systems that is freely available, and it's recognized as kind of the gold standard for securing an election system. I will tell you that every item up here is part of that recommendation from CISA. I will tell you that in Maricopa County, they failed to perform basic operating system patch management functions. Now let me explain that for a bit. So if you have a home computer, you realize that every Thursday or Wednesday, depending on your cycle, Microsoft will release a security patch to correct vulnerabilities that have been discovered since they released the operating system and it was installed on your computer. Okay. The last time that the operating system was patched on the Maricopa County election systems was the date that they installed the Dominion software, which was the 6th of August of 2019. Okay. So at the time of election, it had been over a year since that system had been patched. We found that that was also the same case with the antivirus definitions. So we know, as part of this world that we live in, that people are coming up with new ways to hack a system, to exploit vulnerabilities and get unauthorized access to the systems, and they're doing this continually. All major security vendors update their antivirus at least on a weekly basis to make sure that we can protect our systems from these newly originated vulnerabilities and exploits. The last time that the antivirus had been updated on the Maricopa County systems was the 6th of August 2019. Okay. Now, Maricopa County did release a statement saying that if they had patched the operating system or if they had updated the antivirus, that would have invalidated the EAC certification for the voting system itself. Obviously, there are a couple of issues with this position. And the first one is that we are relying on a certification system that would impose obsolescence instead of security in the very act of trying to secure a voting system. That is nonsensical, and it should never occur. So if that is in fact the case, we need to take a very close look at what we're relying on to validate and certify these election systems and software to ensure that we're not certifying guaranteed obsolescence of the system. Now let's assume for a moment that what Maricopa County said was true, that they could not update those systems because of this certification issue. There are a couple of problems with that, as borne out by the artifacts on the actual EMS server itself. So if that is true, then that would mean that no new executable files, no new dynamic link libraries could be created or modified on that system after the date of the software installation, which once again was 6 August 2019. What we found is that there are 4 executable files that were created after this date of Dominion install. There were 45 executable files that were modified after this date of install. There were 377 dynamic link library files which were created after the Dominion software install. And there were 1,053 DLL files that were modified after this date. So if we assume that what the county represented is true, then in fact, that voting system would not have been certified at the time of the election. Let's talk a little bit about log management here. So there is a federal statute that requires the preservation of election-related materials for 22 months after the date of the election. That applies not only to paper, but that also applies to digital artifacts. Maricopa County failed to preserve the operating system security logs to cover the dates of the election. They provided security logs early in the audit process, but they did not provide the Windows security log itself. When we examined the EMS server, we found that the dates covered by the security log only went back as far as the 5th of February 2021. Now there's a couple reasons for that, and we'll go into those later, but the bottom line is that they failed to preserve those logs, or at least those logs were not turned over to the auditors. And so I'm assuming, since they were part of the subpoena, that those should have been provided had they been present. Okay. The next item there is credential management. This is probably the most offensive item on this list to me because it carries such a huge impact on the securability of a system. What we found is that for the election management system, the adjudication systems, the ICCs, and all of the voting related systems, they all shared a common password for both user accounts and for administrative accounts. And just to be crystal clear, it was the same password for all those accounts. So to complicate matters as well, those accounts had not been changed since the installation of the software. So they were established on the 6th of August 2019 and never changed. There furthermore was not an individual accountability of the users who access specific accounts so that you could tie a username, an action, and an individual when you discovered something that was an anomaly. Okay. We did not see any software or any effort to establish and monitor a host baseline of programs and processes. Furthermore, we did not see any log aggregation or methodology by which to establish and monitor the network communications for this system. There simply was none of that software present on any of these devices. Next slide, please.
There were multiple times where data was overwritten or deleted from the EMS server.
One of the challenges that we had was actually the accountability of deleted items. We'd talked about deleted items before, but let's be crystal clear about this. From the EMS, which is the Election Management System server, on the C drive, there were 865 directories and 85,673 election-related files deleted between 10/28 and 11/05. What is difficult to determine is that I know they were deleted. What I don't have is any accountability or any ability to track from a evidence management perspective how those deleted files were treated and what happened to them if they were archived or not. From the EMS actually had 2 hard drives. Well, they had 6 hard drives configured into 2 logical drives. So the second logical drive was called the D drive, and that contained all of the election database, both historically and should have contained the information for this 2020 general election as well. You'll note that there were 9,571 directories and 1,064,746 election-related files deleted between the 1st of November 20.
So all the logins pretty much had the same password and they weren't assigned to anybody. So you couldn't hold anyone accountable for the deletions, right? You couldn't hold anybody accountable for these alterations that were done to these systems. It's absolutely absurd to think that our federal government tried to tell us that this was the most secure election in U.S. history. Are you kidding me? Logins with the same password? How is that secure? That's not very secure. The fact that Maricopa County withheld routers and network related data, that they didn't provide the poll workers laptops, which were the laptops that were used at the actual polling stations. You know, there was a lot of things that they didn't turn over, a lot of data that was deleted, and nobody in the mainstream media is reporting about that. All of you people out there who work for who have created these independent conservative media outlets, where the hell are you? Why aren't you talking about this? I want to know. Leave a comment down below if you have an idea on why nobody else is covering what actually went down in that 3-hour presentation in Arizona. A recount is just a recount. And if I give you 5 phony $20 bills, you're going to tell me you have $100 until I prove those bills are phony. But once I prove those bills are phony, you no longer have $100. Do you understand how that works? I will leave you with that. If you want to check out the full 3-hour presentation, the link is in the description below, along with both of the sources I've used for this video. And remember, if you want to support the channel, click the merch link down below where you can pick out cool t-shirts like this one and this one. I really like this one. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so you get notified anytime I drop a new video. Smash that like button. Leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think about this video and the topic. I love to engage with my viewers, so feel free to fire away. Also, I'm trying to change the URL of my channel to my channel name instead of all these funky letters and numbers up here. But the only way YouTube's going to let me do that is if I hit 100 subscribers. So make sure to hit that share button and share this video on all social media platforms and help me hit my mark of 100 subscribers. I appreciate you guys watching, and I'll catch y'all later. Peace.